This evening we're going to talk about the Tech Startup Report that we're releasing this evening. Next month, just get that in now before everybody's attention goes elsewhere. Next month on March 13th, we'll be right back here, and our topic is going to be Bitcoin. And is Vance Crow here? Okay, Vance is going to be our guest speaker next month, talking about Bitcoin and opportunities that it may present for St. Louis. So that'll be very interesting. Okay, first, thanks to Tavern of Fine Arts. They have us here, like I said, every month, and they enjoy when we drink and eat their food. So I encourage you to do more of the same. Our sponsors for Second Thursday, there are two of them. One is AHM Financial. George, I know George is here. George Smith, back here. George, thanks. So AHM provides all kinds of insurance for businesses, including a unique product, IP insurance. If you think you've got IP in your startup that may become encroached upon or need protection for that IP, AHM has a very unique product for you to insure that. Our other sponsor for Second Thursday is the iSelect Fund. Is anybody from iSelect here? Scott Levine or Ken Harrington's one of the advisors for iSelect. So it's a fund that is just getting off the ground, really exciting. It's basically a mutual fund for tech startups in St. Louis. So financial planners and wealth managers can get their customers into a diversified product that covers 6 to 8 tech startups. So that's a very exciting new development in the funding side of things, and we've got big hopes for that. One other thing, hopefully everybody got one of the drink cards. If you look at that, it's 1 million cups. 1 million cups is another event that ITEN sponsors. It's an every week event on Wednesday mornings, 9 o'clock at the 9 Network, which is Channel 9 on, I think it's on Olive, in the Grand Center area. 1 or 2 entrepreneurs each Wednesday morning gets up and talks about their company that they're starting. It's not an investor pitch. It's really a community announcement of something new and different that they've got going. So it's a great way to network with other entrepreneurs, people looking for opportunities with entrepreneurs. So I encourage everybody, if you haven't been to 1 Million Cups, to please come. Want to show of hands now. Cord, are you ready? Okay, this is your time. Okay, anybody who's here for the first time, please raise your hand and keep it up. Okay, Cord, you're on.
Plus or minus 3 or 4.
No, he's got to be exact. Don't let him off. You got it? All right, you can put your hands down. Thank you. All right, good man, Court. Okay, so we've got a few things new this afternoon as well. Jing, at your post. Okay, so one of the things that we have new is that ITEN, which has had this logo ever since we got started back in, actually before we got started back in 2008, with these men in black wandering around aimlessly in a wheat field. We've had a hard time figuring out what that's all about, and and they're not MacBooks that they've got either. I don't know what it is. So we've thanks to Spoke. Is anybody from Spoke here? Okay, great. Spoke has done a dynamite job working with us and I'm telling you, working with us is not an overstatement. They put up with a lot with us because we're pretty exacting and demanding and gave them a hard time, but they came up with what we think is going to be a dynamite new logo, so let's take the old one down and bring out the new ones. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right, so, and it's Jing's job, who's our manager of information systems, to, when everybody wakes up tomorrow morning, everything ITEN is going to look like that, right? All right. Yeah. So All right, so before I get started on anything else, we've got a special guest this evening that I'd like to come up real quickly, Yaz Motoyama. Yaz. So Yaz is with the Kauffman Foundation. He's a senior researcher with Kauffman. Kauffman's one of our sponsors, and I just want to introduce Yaz and say a few words about what we're involved with Kauffman.
Well, thanks, Jim. And it's my pleasure to be here. I'm a senior scholar at the Kauffman Foundation. I do mostly research. So I want to mention just one thing about the research, that this report, in the last few years, whenever we give grants to entrepreneurship support organizations, we've been encouraging them to collect the data about what kind of companies they support. It's supposed to be, or you may think that it should be an easy thing, but actually it is not. And quite a few cases, what we hear is that we are very successful programs because we have supported 26 companies last year, and company A is successful and company B is successful. And that's nice, but it's still an anecdote. You know, if we have to kind of see what's happening with a company C to all the way to company Z. And that's not an easy thing. But ITEN, Jim, Francis, and Lynn made a tremendous effort to collect this data since last year, and it was good to see the report last year, but I'm again glad to see this report. I think they have made even more improvement. So I'm very excited to be here today. Also, Kauffman Foundation is expanding its research and outreach effort in St. Louis. With the collaboration of ITEN, we've been interviewing high-growth Inc. companies. So we just had the first interview this morning, and it was a very exciting, very interesting interview. And I myself am conducting another project about the startup ecosystem in St. Louis. So to say that there are so many exciting, great things going in St. Louis, many innovative entrepreneurs, and very successful, wonderful supporting organizations in St. Louis. So, well, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful to have you here, Yes. Thanks. So let's get on with the main event of the evening. Last year, many of you know that we came out with a tech startup report really highlighting the developments in the tech ecosystem during 2012. So this year and that one, actually we didn't get that out until when was it? June. Okay, June. It was you know, it was a lot. It turned out to be a lot more work than we thought. So this year we got an early start. And here it is only February, and we're coming out with it. So we're pretty excited about that. I want to recognize a few folks before we get into the meat of what the report says. And every one of you will get one copy of the report as you leave this afternoon. So that's Court's other main job today, is to make sure you get one when you leave. But I want to first recognize somebody here on our team, Lynn Nguyen. So many of you here who are startups have gotten to know Lynn because she's been pestering you about your data, okay? And the reason is that we needed your data for the report that we put together. So she's done an incredible job, a lot of work. We tried a couple of interns, not Court. This was before Court's time. And it was a little spotty in terms of their help. So Lynn ended up having to do pretty much all of it on her own in terms of gathering the data. So really hats off to her. And we've done a much better qualitative job in terms of gathering that data just in the last couple months than we did a year ago. So not only is it out earlier, but the quality of the data we know internally is much better. The other person I want to recognize is somebody who's worked with us on both of them and really done a dynamite job in terms of the look and the feel and the presentation, and that's Brian Poznansky with Traffic PRM. Brian, if you want to stand up. So Brian, the company Traffic PRM is ITEN's PR company, and Brian's been great in terms of helping us think through, presentation of the report, how to place it, and we're going to have a press release coming out tomorrow that Brian's put together for us. So he's done a great job on that. So what we're going to do now is wait, I want to do the hashtags, right? Okay, Jing, hashtags.
The hashtag for tonight is always for second Thursday is second Thursday, and that is 2ND and the Thursday without space. And for the startup report is ITEN startup, ITEN tech startup report.
Those of you that like hashtags, now you got them. Okay, so we're going to start with the report. Here, let me hold up the copy. So we're going to start up with the report. We're going to actually start at the back and work our way forward. So Francis is going to be up first.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, in typical ITEN fashion, we're going to start in the back and do things backwards. So one of the things that ITEN does, if you're not familiar with us, if this is your first time here, we're able to provide our programming and mentoring to startups in the tech space without charging the startups or taking any equity. And the reason we're able to do that is really because of our long-term sponsors that have been with us for some time. So on the back of the report, we've and Jim's mentioned a few of these already. We wanted to take some time to recognize them. So the Missouri Technology Corporation, which also supports many of our tech startups in Missouri as well, part of the Department of Economic Development. They've been very supportive of ITEN. Kauffman Foundation, as we've mentioned, and we're happy to have Yaz here today. The St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, they've also been a multi-year sponsor of ITEN, and we're greatly appreciative of that, as has AHM Financial, whom Jim mentioned, who also sponsors our specifically our second Thursday event. CenturyLink, formerly Savvis, has also come forward as a sponsor. G2I, which is Gateway to Innovation. If you're not familiar with this conference, it's held every spring here in St. Louis. Lots of really great companies are represented. A lot of CIOs and corporate sort of IT folks are there, but they're also kind of moving towards an innovation track as well that we're helping them out with. Greensfelder Law has been come on as a sponsor. Jim mentioned the iSelect Fund, as well as the St. Louis Archangels have been supportive of ITEN. And we've got two new sponsors that have just come on recently. Polsinelli, who many of you know is an active law firm here in town. And I think everybody knows Stone Carley, or if you don't know Marie Carley, you're probably, living under a rock right now. She's everywhere and has been very supportive of us. So just those are some of the sponsors sort of on the back, and we want to just take a moment and thank them and recognize them. So if you can give them a round of applause, please. So we want to, as Jim mentioned, you'll get a parting gift if you'd like, which is one copy of this startup report. We have it as in a digital format if you prefer. But we want to just take a minute before we bring the companies up and recognize some of the great companies that we're recognizing tonight, is talk a little bit about some of the data and the reporting that's stuff that's in this report here. Couple things that are to bring your attention to. We were able to get some guests to write up some really interesting articles sort of in this report. We have Rodney Krim, who's the president of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, talking about St. Louis as a startup city, bringing in some really interesting things that happened in 2013. We also have Cliff Holcamp, who many of you may know. He's a senior lecturer over in entrepreneurship at WashU and also a general partner at Cultivation Capital here in town. Cliff introduces the money section of this report and talks about many of the deals that happened in town and some of the things that were syndicated with out-of-town venture capital deals as well, and some of the robust investment that occurred in 2013 in the tech sector. So we want to thank Rodney and Cliff for providing those interesting articles for us. Just to share a couple things with you on when we did some surveying of the companies that we did get data from, and we asked them how they would rate St. Louis as a place to do for a tech startup, and over 85% rated St. Louis as good or excellent as a place to do a startup, which is an interesting thing. I think we look at the continuum of care here in town, and it's getting better and better, and I think this is becoming obviously a hotbed for startups. But of course, it's not perfect. So we also asked our entrepreneurs what's lacking in the region, and not surprisingly, 44% of you said more funding would be helpful. I know, is anybody out here looking for money at this point? If you guys probably responded that way. Other things that made that list were mentoring. and talent, obviously. And we've talked about some of those key initiatives that are happening right now with things like Institute and Launch Code. ITEN has its own talent finder, so we are trying to address some of these pieces that are lacking. You know, I think some of our funders, they're very interested in some of the economic data that comes out of what we have with our startups and how the startup scene is becoming a driver of jobs and hiring. And so startups are looking to hire over 500 people in 2014, according to some of the data that we brought about. Not surprisingly, most of those, or 30% of those jobs, are technical, talented people that they're looking for. But they're also concentrating on business development. So sales and business development made up 20% of those forecasts as well. So there's more data in here about sort of the jobs and the hiring that the startups are looking to do, which is really interesting. And on the money side, which of course is what everybody is interested in, companies in St. Louis, based on our data, had monthly revenue rates of nearly $6 million. It's the aggregate total of the startups in that we're working with in I-10 here in St. Louis that we were able to get data from. And they've raised, in 2013, nearly $67 million. You're going to hear more about that, I think, in other reports that are going to be coming out. But this is some of the data that we were able to cultivate from our companies in I-10. So the last piece that I want to talk about, and I'll kind of use a little show and tell here. One of the things I-10 did last year, which I think got a lot of positive praise, was we created an infographic on why St. Louis is a good place to do a startup, and it had some really good statistics about it. It's plastered all over T-Rex if you're ever down there. Pretty much as we plastered it everywhere around town that we could. What we thought about doing now is, because of the robust growth in the ecosystem in the last couple years, is really just kind of mapping out and just naming and identifying who's in this space, who's around town in the areas of facilities, in the areas of funding, in the areas of accelerating the ventures. And so you'll find in the report, just, this is hard to see for you guys in the back, but kind of a spoken wheel, just kind of presentation of everybody we could think of in this space. And probably one of the most important pieces of text on the page is the little disclaimer at the bottom, which sort of says, we know we probably forgot somebody or left them off or didn't connect the right dots. So I'm kind of here to kind of take the bullets for the team on this one. When you look at this, thank you. Yeah. When you look at this, and if you're somebody that should be on there, or you want to see this represented in a different way, or you have a different take on it, I'd love to discuss that with you and figure out. I would love to do another infographic like this. It was really well received, what we did last year. It was very ecumenical and inclusive of everybody in the ecosystem, and that's really what we're looking at. We're not looking to kind of rank these or put anybody above anyone else. It's really just to kind of lay it out there, and we think this could be a really useful roadmap for entrepreneurs, particularly people new to St. Louis who don't really know how this all fits together. So take a look at that. When you get a copy of it, shoot me an email, or Jim. You could email Jim. That's fine by me. But take a look at that, and let's have some robust discussion around it, because I'd love to put something out there very soon. So,
Francis, what was the universe of the respondees on that 67 million? How many firms did that include? Do you recall?
Lynn, that's a Lynn question. How many? 40.
No, wait.
Oh, no.
40 companies received outside funding.
Okay.
But in other words, the companies that we surveyed was 300, right?
220. Yeah. So with that, I want to keep things moving along. Jim, you're going to talk a little bit more about some of the segment rankings that we did within the report.
Okay, thanks a lot, Francis. So, one of the things we want to do here is kind of reflect on last year, and also recognize specific companies that had considerable success, and also just celebrate the fact that the tech scene here in St. Louis has heated up, and it keeps getting hotter and hotter, and all kinds of good things are happening, both in terms of companies growing and increasing revenue, companies raising more money, companies hiring people, and a lot of people starting to feel better and better about St. Louis as a place to have a tech startup. So what we've got in our report is a series of segment rankings where we have taken companies and looked at them segment by segment. And these are segments that are self-selected. So in other words, when companies get involved with ITEN, we ask them, okay, what segment is your company in? And then we've kind of ranked those. So let me back up and say what factors went into our rankings. These are not subjective decisions on our part where we went in a smoke-filled room and decided, okay, this company's better than that company, so we're going to rank them higher. No. This is all based on empirical data that has been voluntarily shared with us by the companies that are involved with ITEN that give us our data. And we think that that represents about 80% of the tech startups in St. Louis. Not all of them. And also companies that started before ITEN got started that are doing a lot of great things and raising a lot of money. Answers.com, Apistry, Global Velocity, Exegy, some of these other companies are not included in this report because they have never really become, part of ITEN. And it brings up the whole issue, which we're probably going to try to define sometime between this year and next year. When do you get to stop being a startup? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? Is it 10 years? What is a startup? So, at some point, and one of our rankings tonight is going to make a demarcation there, but, probably by next year we're going to come up and say, okay, startups are companies that have started within the last X number of years. So right now it's a little bit amorphous in the way that we're doing that. We're looking at companies that have joined ITEN since we started. So what we do is we ask for basically 3 major chunks of data. One has to do with revenue, how much revenue they go, and we use most recent average monthly revenue. So in other words, if you've got revenue that is pretty constant or increasing gradually, what's the latest month of revenue? Is that representative of kind of average? So in other words, if you had a dynamite December that was 30 times more than any other month, that's not an average monthly revenue. So we'd want you to kind of even that out somewhat. So you report that to us, and we use that in our formula. Second piece is number of employees, full-time and part-time, in St. Louis and out of St. Louis. So there's some companies here that have really considerable number of employees outside of St. Louis. So we are including those employees for the most part in our calculations. So, the more employees, the higher the ranking of the company, or at least in that factor. And then the third big issue is outside funding. So how much money have you raised from, and we take into account friends and family as well as VC money, so everything in between. We don't include in our data money that the founders have put into the company, or, I've been working at this thing for 2 years, and I haven't gotten paid myself, and I should be making $100,000 a year, so there's $200,000 into my company. We don't count that. But if Uncle Fred wrote a check for $25,000, yeah, we count that. So we're capturing more data on funding than is reported in the press, for example. Then we take that and we also look at the acceleration of those 3 factors. So over the period of 2013, what were the changes in employees, in revenue, and in funding? So if there has been an increase in those factors or any of those factors during the year, that adds to the ranking points of the company. If there's been a decline, that takes away from it. So we've got a fairly complex formula that we plug all those numbers in, and and Lynn pushes the button on our computer, and out comes our rankings. So that's the way we do it. We are not picking favorites here, and we are using data that has been freely given to us by the companies. Most companies are very happy to do that because we make, and we've made good ever since ITEN got started on not sharing any of the specific company data with anybody. So, so that's great, and like I say, 95% of the companies are very open and forthcoming as long as we're able to track them down in sharing that data. There are a few companies that have chosen not to share that data, and so we have no choice but to use a goose egg instead of what maybe it really is. We don't really know. and I think there's 1 or 2 cases where that may have impacted the rankings of the company. So that kind of explains how we do what we do.